You did it this morning. Maybe you barely thought about it. You picked up a piece of plastic filled with metal blades, dragged it across your face, or your legs, or wherever you drag it, and you moved on with your day. What you didn't think about was the person who did the exact same thing 30,000 years ago. Crouched at the edge of a freezing river. No mirror, no foam, no five-blade cartridge with a moisturizing strip. Just a clamshell they'd finished eating breakfast from, still sharp at the broken edge, pressed against their own skin. Same act, 30,000 years apart. Why do you think humans started shaving? Comment down below. So when did this actually start? And more importantly, why would anyone in the Ice Age, when a beard was free insulation in a world that was actively trying to kill you with cold, go out of their way to remove it? The answer involves obsidian blades sharper than modern surgical steel, an Egyptian sugar wax recipe still being used in salons today, and a piece of information that genuinely surprised me when I found it. In ancient Mesopotamia, shaving wasn't just a grooming choice, it was a law. And being shaved against your will was one of the worst things that could happen to you. Let's start with the tool, because before anyone could shave anything, they needed something sharp enough to do the job. And here's the thing that tends to get lost when people think about ancient humans and technology. They were obsessed with sharpness. For roughly 3 million years, the central technology of the human story wasn't fire, and it wasn't the wheel. It was the blade. Sharp stone, flint, chert, obsidian, knocked and chipped into cutting edges that could slice through hide, sinew, and meat. This was the technology humans spent most of their existence perfecting. And one of those stones was genuinely extraordinary. Obsidian is volcanic glass. When it fractures, it breaks in a pattern called a conchoidal fracture, and the edge it leaves behind can be just a few nanometers thick. To put that in perspective, that is sharper than modern surgical steel. Not a little sharper, measurably, demonstrably sharper. Some surgeons today still use obsidian scalpels for specialized procedures where the cleanliness of the cut reduces scarring. Ancient humans didn't know anything about nanometers, but they knew by feel that some stones could open skin like it was nothing. And a tool that sharp doesn't just butcher an animal, it can take the hair right off a face. Archaeologists have found thin, delicately worked stone flakes across Europe, Africa, and Asia, showing exactly the wear patterns you'd expect from scraping skin rather than cutting meat or wood. Some are so finely made they look almost decorative. They weren't decorative, they were working tools. And here's something worth sitting with. A flint razor is technically still sharp today. You could pick one up 10,000 years after someone last used it, and it would still cut you. The edge doesn't dull just because the civilization that made it disappeared. But stone is only part of the story, because alongside the flint and the obsidian, there's the shell. And the shell is where this story gets unexpectedly elegant. Ancient humans living near coastlines were eating shellfish constantly. Clams, mussels, oysters. Easy to gather at low tide, packed with protein, no hunting required. And when you crack open a clam, you're left with two hard, curved halves. The broken edge of a shell can be startlingly sharp. Not obsidian sharp, but sharp enough. And these people were surrounded every single day by a free, renewable, disposable cutting tool that cost them nothing and required no manufacturing at all. You ate lunch. Lunch came with a razor. But the really clever part isn't the scraping edge. It's what happened when you held two shell halves together. Two opposing curved surfaces pressed together, pinching. Ancient tweezers. Individual hairs plucked out by the root, using a tool nature had already made from the leftovers of breakfast. If you have a pair of metal tweezers in your bathroom right now, you are looking at a tool whose function was solved by an ancient human with a clam. The principle is identical. We just swapped the shell for stainless steel. So that's the how. Now comes the more interesting question. Why? Because here's what should stop you for a moment. It's the Ice Age. You're already cold most of the year. A beard is free insulation. It's a built-in scarf that costs you nothing and never needs washing. And yet, all over the ancient world, archaeologists keep finding evidence that humans were spending real time and real effort removing facial and body hair. That is, on its face, a deeply irrational thing to do. There are 3 answers, and they get progressively more human as they go. The first answer is brutally practical. Parasites. A thick beard and dense body hair are, in a world with no soap and no hot showers, a paradise for lice, fleas, ticks, and mites. Hair is real estate. It is a place for things to live. Things that bite you. Things that spread disease. Things that in a world with no antibiotics could kill you as effectively as a predator could. Louse-borne disease killed people throughout most of human history. Typhus, trench fever, relapsing fever, all spread by lice, all capable of decimating entire populations. The first human who scraped their face with a shell might not have been thinking about appearance at all. They might have just been desperate to stop itching and to get the things living in their hair to move somewhere else. The second answer is combat. A beard is a handle. In a hand-to-hand fight, which was how most fights happened for most of human history, a fistful of beard is a grip. An enemy can use it to wrench your head exactly where they want it, usually toward a sharp object moving in the opposite direction. Alexander the Great is famously said to have ordered his soldiers to shave before battle for exactly this reason. Whether that specific command happened precisely as described is debated by historians, but the underlying logic is real, ancient, and brutally simple. A clean face is one fewer thing for someone to hold on to while they're trying to kill you. In cultures across the ancient world, from Greece to Japan to Mesoamerica, military men were often deliberately clean-shaven, and the reasoning wasn't always aesthetic. The third answer is where it gets most interesting. Identity, status, belonging. The moment you start removing hair on purpose, you've created a signal. A visible, legible signal that says something about who you are. And ancient humans, who were extraordinarily sensitive to social signals because their survival depended on reading other people correctly, picked up on that instantly. In ancient Egypt, the evidence for this is overwhelming. Egyptian priests, according to the Greek historian Herodotus, shaved their entire bodies every few days. Not just the face. Everything. The reasoning was ritual purity. Body hair was associated with the animal, the unclean, the impure. You could not stand before a god in a state that animals lived in. But it wasn't only priests. Egyptians of high status across genders removed hair as a marker of refinement and rank. They had copper razors, and later bronze ones, some of which have survived thousands of years and sit in museums today. They had pumice stones for scrubbing. They had early forms of waxing, using pastes made from sugar, water, and lemon juice heated to a specific consistency, then applied and stripped. A technique, by the way, whose direct descendant you can still book at any salon in the world right now. A grooming method invented on the banks of the Nile is still running 4,000 years later, basically unchanged. And here's the detail that should genuinely stop you. In Bronze Age Europe, archaeologists have found razors that are not just functional, they're beautiful. Decorated bronze blades, some engraved with intricate patterns, some shaped like crescent moons or stylized animals. And some of them were buried with their owners, as grave goods, placed alongside the dead to be taken into whatever came next. People were buried with their razors. Out of everything a person might choose to take into the afterlife, these individuals were sent off with the tool they used to shape their own face. That is not a disposable object. That's identity made physical. The way they presented themselves to the world mattered so much that they wanted that capability with them in death. Let's talk about Ötzi for a moment, because he sits right at the center of this story in a way that's easy to overlook. When scientists examined Ötzi's remains after his discovery in 1991, they found something that had nothing to do with his famous tattoos or his murder weapon. His hair and beard, despite being over 5,000 years old, showed signs of deliberate trimming. They weren't wild and unmanaged, they were kept relatively short. Ötzi was a groomed Copper Age man who, in the mountains, thousands of years before the Roman Empire existed, was maintaining the hair on his face with the tools available to him. He also carried a copper axe, which was the most advanced cutting technology of his era. Copper is soft enough to hold an edge capable of scraping skin. We cannot say with certainty that Ötzi used his axe to shave, but we know he was groomed, we know he had a sharp metal tool, and we know he was living at exactly the moment when copper implements were beginning to replace stone ones across Europe. He is, in some ways, the closest thing we have to a photograph of what the shaving transition looked like in real time. A man partway between the shell and the barbershop, managing his own appearance with the best technology of his moment, 30,000 years after the first human picked up a broken clam and decided their face could look different. Now let's skip forward to Rome, because Rome is where shaving stopped being a personal habit and became a genuine social institution. The Roman barbershop, the tonsure, was not just a place you went to get your face scraped with a metal blade. It was the social hub of the ancient city. Men gathered there not just for grooming, but to exchange news, argue politics, conduct business, gossip, and spend time. The barber himself was a central figure in neighborhood life, someone who knew everybody's business precisely because everybody came through his shop. Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century, records that professional barbers were introduced to Rome from Sicily around the year 300 BC. Before that, Romans apparently went largely unshaven. After that, the daily shave became a Roman institution so embedded in culture that it shaped how Romans thought about civilization itself. A bearded man was a barbarian. A clean-shaved man was a citizen. The blade had become a marker of belonging to the most powerful culture on Earth. Think about how far that is from the shell by the frozen river. 30,000 years of continuous practice, starting with parasite removal and survival logic, ending up as the defining visual symbol of Roman citizenship and cultural identity. The same act, the same basic gesture of dragging a sharp edge across skin, carrying completely different meaning depending on where and when you were doing it. This is also why we have the word barber at all. It comes directly from the Latin barba, meaning beard. The barber was literally the beard man, the person who managed the beard, which in Rome quickly came to mean the person who removed it. The word traveled through French into English, and it is still with us now, more than 2,000 years after Roman men lined up in their neighborhood tonsures to have a citizen's clean face restored before getting on with their day. Now let's come back to the thing I mentioned at the start, because this is the piece of the shaving story that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most revealing thing in all of it. In ancient Mesopotamia, among the Sumerians and Babylonians, access to shaving was legally controlled. The right to be shaved by a professional barber was a privilege. It was connected to your status as a free citizen, and the punishment for certain crimes, certain failures, certain losses of status, was forced shaving. To be shaved against your will, to have your hair cut off by someone else's decision, was a humiliation so significant it was written into legal codes. Think about what that tells you. Grooming, the choice to shape your own appearance, was so deeply tied to personal dignity and social standing that removing someone's ability to do it on their own terms was considered a punishment. The absence of hair wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a statement of ownership over your own body and your own place in society. Take that away, and you've taken something fundamental. This shows up in other cultures too. Across ancient and medieval history, forced haircutting appears again and again as a way of marking defeat, shame, or loss of status. Viking sagas describe it. Medieval legal texts describe it. The Bible describes it. Not because hair itself was magical, but because controlling your own appearance was understood everywhere as a basic expression of selfhood. Strip that away, and you've communicated something devastating about a person's standing. We've covered the practicalities of shaving, the parasites, the combat advantage, the status signaling. But there's one more angle worth considering: what shaving may have done to human sociality itself. Think about what a face looks like buried in thick hair versus a face that's been deliberately cleared. When you remove beard hair, you reveal the jaw, the chin, the cheeks, the whole underlying structure of a person's head. You make the face readable in a completely new way, You expose expression, you expose age, you expose health and symmetry and emotion in ways that hair obscures. Humans are a face-reading species. We are extraordinarily sensitive to facial expressions, far more so than any other animal. We can read microsecond changes in someone's face that communicate intentions, emotions, and health status in ways we can't fully articulate. And grooming, specifically removing facial hair, may be one of the ways early humans enhanced their ability to do exactly that. A shaved face is a billboard. It is a display surface. It says, "Look at me. Look at what my face is doing. Read me accurately." Some evolutionary researchers have argued that grooming behaviors in primates are deeply linked to social bonding. When primates groom each other, they're doing something that goes far beyond cleaning. They're building trust, reinforcing relationships, communicating care and affiliation. Human grooming may have inherited and extended that same social function. The person helping you shave the back of your neck is doing something structurally similar to two chimps picking through each other's fur. We just added status signaling, aesthetic preference, and 4,000 years of Egyptian sugar wax on top. There's one more piece of this story worth slowing down for, because it connects the ancient world directly to something happening right now in ways most people haven't considered. Modern research on grooming and social perception has found consistently that how someone manages their appearance, including facial hair, has a measurable effect on how others perceive their health, their status, their trustworthiness, and their competence. Studies across multiple cultures show that observers make snap judgments about these qualities within fractions of a second of seeing a face, often before any conscious processing has happened. What this means is that the social signaling function of grooming that ancient humans were navigating with shells and stone flakes is still running in your brain right now. The same basic cognitive process that made a clean-shaved Egyptian priest look more pure, that made a freshly shaved Roman soldier look more disciplined, that made a bearded Viking look more formidable, is still operating every time you look at a person's face and form an instant impression. We've updated the technology, we've changed the cultural meanings. A beard today signals something entirely different than it did in ancient Rome, where it marked you as a foreigner. But the underlying process, appearance as social signal, appearance as identity, appearance as belonging, has not changed at all. The grooming choices you make every morning are communicating something to everyone who sees you, just as they communicated something to every group our ancestors were ever part of. The shell by the river started this, but what it started was never really about the hair. It was about the signal. It was about the message a shaped face sent to the people around you. It was about saying, without words, "I belong here. I am this kind of person. I am healthy. I am aligned with my group. I am in control of how I present myself to the world." That's a very old message, and we're still sending it. So when did ancient humans start shaving? The honest answer is that the physical evidence takes us back at least 30,000 years, and it almost certainly started before that. What we can trace is a single unbroken line. Shell and stone in the deep prehistoric past, copper and bronze by the time of Utsi and the first cities, organized barbering by the time of Greece and Rome, the barbershop as a social institution, the status razor as grave good, and eventually, the 5-blade cartridge in your bathroom. All of it connected. All of it tracing back to a moment by a frozen river when someone looked at the leftover from breakfast, noticed the edge was sharp, and decided to do something with it. This morning, if you shaved or trimmed or plucked anything at all, you took part in a ritual older than farming, older than writing, possibly older than the language you're using to think about this right now. You picked up the great-great-great-grandchild of a clamshell and reshaped yourself. The technology changed beyond all recognition. The instinct, apparently, did not.